Well, I think kind of we know where the direction this staff is going to go and where their focus is going to go. It's time for flip season. Okay, because Oregon is sitting in a great spot. As I mentioned, I think that they are going to be very selective with the flips that they pursue. There's not a really ton of high-profile, uncommitted players, on the board right now overall, and certainly that Oregon is targeting right now. So they are going to go hard into flip season, and they're going to put a lot of their resources, I think, into a handful of players that they really want. So if I'm in that war room, if I've got the whiteboard in front of me, these are the players and the positions that I would try to target. I want to start with the linebacker position. We know what happened recently, right? They lost out on Tyler Atkinson. He committed to Texas. They lost out on Nick Abrams as well. He committed to Georgia. And, it's kind of like a lot of what's been going on the last couple of years where they just haven't been able to find that top-tier linebacker. They've got one linebacker committed into this class. That is Tristan Phillips. And this always seemed like a multi-linebacker, a two-linebacker type of recruiting class. So I think that this is going to be a position that this staff is going to really look to pull off a flip. Who are my candidates? I've got Talanoa Ely, who's currently committed to USC, and I've got the aforementioned Nick Abrams, who we know committed to Georgia. Let's start with Ely. I believe Ely probably would be higher on the flip target list than Nick Abrams would be, because Ely, early on in this cycle, he was an Oregon lean. It seemed like Oregon was in a really good position with him, and then they kind of seemed to back off of him a little bit. Is that because they wanted to swing big with a guy like Tyler Atkinson? I don't know. Certainly don't know the truth on that right now, but Ely is a really good player, the number one player in the state of Hawaii, four-star guy, number 84 in the country according to the Rivals Industry. If they were able to flip Ely, this would be one of their... That'd be one of their top linebackers that they've gotten, certainly in the last couple of years, rankings-wise anyway. He's a number 5 linebacker in the country, 6'3", 210. Now, I think a lot of maybe Oregon not being in this race late, USC and UCLA were his final two schools that he were deciding on, I think is because Oregon, sounds like they initially wanted him as an edge. USC wanted him as a linebacker, and it sounds like Ely wanted to play the linebacker position at the college level, but what do we know now? Prince Tavazon is in this class. Anthony Tank Jones is in this class. I think the Ducks feel pretty darn good at the edge position, and they need another linebacker. So maybe the Ducks will shift their focus on where they kind of view Ely at the next level, recruiting him more as a linebacker here as maybe these months go on as we get closer to the early signing period. And I want to say this right off the bat for USC. And I've kind of talked to some USC people about this, and they feel the same way. USC needs to win to be able to maintain this recruiting class. We know the story with USC, 7-5 and 6-6 in the regular season. That number one class, we know that they've spent a bunch of money, but to be able to, I think, keep these guys and sign these guys, the Trojans have got to have a successful year. So if you're midway through the season and USC is 4-3 or they're close to 500, I think there's some teams, Oregon included, and I think there's going to be other teams that are going to maybe be sharks in the water to see if they can go after some of these USC commitments as well. And I think Talanoa Ely is certainly going to be one of those big targets that Oregon is certainly going to go after as well. Would love to see him in the fold in this class when all is said and done in December. And then Nick Abrams, 6'2", 220 pounds, out of Maryland. That's kind of really where my talking points come in here with him. We know Emmanuel Ahinacho is committed to this class. We know that Maryland has been a little bit of a pipeline. Ife Obadegwu was out there. Brandon Finney was out there in a recent recruiting classes. So maybe there can be a little bit of a behind-the-scenes, peer-to-peer, player-to-player kind of recruiting going on to be able to get him back in the fold. Oregon was a finalist with Michigan and Georgia as well. So somehow maybe that they can leverage those connections. But I would certainly put Ely higher on the target list and probably higher on the possibility list to be able to flip than I would Nick Abrams. Look, linebacker at Georgia, that's a pretty hot ticket. I will certainly say that. Staying on the defensive side of the ball and, talking about USC, again, look, there's with a lot of these, this is not intel-based. I'm not saying that these are likely going to happen or this one might happen more than the other. I'm just saying kind of where my feelings are at right now. Tamahini Tapui, man. Oh, man. When you talk about the flips from the spring, This is one that's up there. I think that stings. That stings really stings a lot. It stings a lot. 6'2", 337 pounds, number 145 overall player according to the Rivals Industry. And now with the loss of Ami Malawa. I mean, yeah, Ami was like a high 3-star, low 4-star, but his frame was that defensive tackle, was that nose tackle type of frame that you really look for. 300 plus pounds, what you look for in the middle, that beef that you look for in the middle out there. Now, I mean, Tony Cumberland's committed. But he's like 280, 285. I mean, Deuce Gerald's could commit to this class, but he's like high 260s, low 270s right now. When you look to that big boy in the middle of the defensive line, that's something that the Ducks are lacking in this cycle right now. And to be able to keep on chopping wood, as they say over at Scoop Duck, with somebody like Tamahini Tapui, that's somebody that I would love to see back in the fold as well. Now, he committed to Oregon after the Ohio State victory in October last year. He flipped to USC, and this is no joke. He flipped to USC on April 1st. He was the Trinity League MVP last year. I mean, he can move with his big size as well. So I think this is one that Oregon, I think, would be very smart to just continue to keep in contact. And this is why that USC game is so important, really, for recruiting. If they can play, on November 22nd, if they can take care of business, especially in convincing fashion against the Trojans, that could really help. Maybe swing things back the other way for a Talanoa Ely or someone like a Tamahini Tapui on that defensive line as well. I want to go to the offensive side of the football for my last group of flip targets, and that's wide receiver. We know Ross Douglas has certainly been doing some good things right now. There are 2 commitments for the Ducks in this class. That's Messiah Hampton, and that is also Jalen Lott. They took 2 wide receivers last year, so there might be room for another wide receiver. We know Gatlin Bear is coming in, but once again, kid coming off of a mission. There's some things that there could be some loose ends. Maybe things aren't totally guaranteed from where they were a couple of years ago when he was in the class of 2024. So it could certainly provide a better feeling and some good insurance if they can go out and get another wide receiver. I've got Caden Dixon-Wyatt, who's currently committed to Ohio State, and Calvin Russell, who's currently committed to Syracuse. Let's talk about KDW first. The number 111 overall player according to the Rivals Industry, and the number 13 wide receiver. Now, it's worth noting, Lott and Messiah Hampton are higher on that list than KDW right now. So if he does flip, it's not like he's flipping to be like the Ducks' number 1 target at the wide receiver position. It came down to Oregon and Ohio State when he committed in the spring. You certainly can't fault a high-profile 4-star receiver for committing to wide receiver U like Ohio State, but there was a decent amount of smoke. Our buddy Max Torres over at Scoop Duck, he made a prediction that he was going to end up at Oregon. So that one really went down to the wire over there. So we'll see if they can maybe keep in contact a little bit. And this would be another really good addition to the staff. Ohio State has 3 other blue chip wide receivers in their class, including Chris Henry Jr. Now, I know there's been kind of some stuff thrown out there. It's like, hey, Oregon could kind of keep on going after that one and keep on going after that one. But he's like a top of the line 5-star wide receiver with a ton of size out there, and he's committed to Ohio State. I'm not sure how likely a flip would be in that situation. I'm maybe working a little bit more realistic with these wide receiver flips right now. Now, if you're looking for a tall guy, if you're looking for a 5-star, I think flipping Calvin Russell might be a little bit more realistic. 6'5", 190, the number 28 overall player according to the Rivals Industry, and the number 4 wide receiver. He was really rising late coming out of the state of Florida. Now, as I said, he's currently committed to Syracuse, Michigan, Florida State, Syracuse, and Oregon were his finalists. The Ducks were one of his 6 official visits. There was some smoke in that recruitment to be like, hey, things are really coming on strong late for Russell. And of course, Oregon did not get the job done. He didn't even take an official visit to Syracuse. This one kind of came out of left field. Now, all props due to Fran Brown for getting this done. But at the time, it was a little bit of a head scratcher. It was kind of one of those commits where it'd be like, that might be one that might go another way later in the cycle with a program where maybe they kind of go back to the drawing board and they put in a late financial offer a little bit later in the cycle to get him to flip. Now, I was kind of doing some research. And of course, we know Ross Douglas was the former wide receivers coach at Syracuse. Now, I obviously found the connection and knew the connection between Douglas and Messiah Hampton. Couldn't really find a huge connection between Ross Douglas and Calvin Russell, but, you have to assume, this guy was the wide receivers coach as recently as January. You have to assume that Ross Douglas and Calvin Russell certainly had some sort of relationship in that recruitment, unless it came on really late, which I'm not sure if that's what happened. But if Ross Douglas can cook, man, if he can use that prior relationship that I believe existed, and he can capitalize on that and keep on working, that's a flip I think I see probably more realistic than Caden Dixon-Wyatt, and it's certainly more realistic than Chris Henry Jr. as well. No doubt about it, flip season is about to be upon us.